Welcome to the No Love Podcast, where we decrease tomorrow's divorce rate today by teaching singles and couples alike how to experience love on purpose and not by chance. I am your host, Edward L. Fairley, accompanied by my wonderful co-host, Michelle Larkin. Michelle, say hi to the people.
What's up?
Perfect. So basically, I'm going to just go in on the topic. This is a very sensitive topic. And the reason why it's a sensitive topic is because once you know this information, you can't unknow this information. And with that, it's a tough decision that you have to make. You can either move forward in a manner that allows for you to disregard what I'm saying or not check, so to speak, which you'll find out what I mean on whether you are loved or wanted for who you are. Or some people will find out and just decide, well, I'm not going to ask. I'm just going to go into this in hopes that someone or the person is really, really interested in me. It's looking like that the Facebook Live is not accepting, which is okay. We'll just have to post it later on and just keep going. So the topic of today is how to avoid marrying the wrong one or find out that you did. I'll repeat that. The topic of the day is how to avoid marrying the wrong one or to find out that you did. So first I want to start by
how to find out that you did marry the wrong person is what you're saying.
That's
right?
Exactly.
How do I find out that I did
how to
marry
realize, and actually probably a better way for me to say it is to say, because what's very common, and I get this all the time, and probably a lot of people, if they think about it, they can think of this as well. Like, it's a lot of people that I encounter who are like, man, everything was great, but as soon as we got married, everything just went to crap. And I don't know what happened. So on this show today, if you are married and it went to crap, more than likely, you are going to find out what happened. So that's what I mean by you're going to find out or possibly find out that you married the wrong one. I'm still trying to get this Facebook Live so I can get people to be able to participate. If it doesn't work on the third time, which is supposedly considered the charm, then we're just going to move on and they'll have to just get it audibly or via the video, which we post these actual podcasts every week at YouTube, our YouTube channel, which is No Love Podcast. So if you ever want to get caught up on the previous podcast, just go to No Love Podcast and at YouTube, and you'll be able to see us as well as up. It allowed us to go up, as well as if you want to listen via any of our respective platforms, that's like iTunes, Spotify, any podcast platform is pretty much it's available. So you can visit us there. But now that the live is up, let's get into this topic. So again, for those who are just seeing what's going on, the topic of today is how to avoid marrying the wrong person or unfortunately find out that you did marry the wrong person. This is where we are going into spring. This is where weddings are about to happen. People are making sure that the groomsmen have their tuxedos and all the colors and stuff are right for the bridesmaids. Everybody's sizes have been put in, so they got to maintain their weight because they've already put in the different measurements for their bridesmaids' gowns. And this show is going to be the show that will help you to know as to whether you're about to get into this thing called marriage with the right person or possibly the wrong person. But first, I want to quickly talk about why people get married. And it's literally only 2 reasons why people get married. So this is the foundational teaching as to why people get married to assist in me sharing how to avoid marrying the wrong person or finding out that you did. So there's 2 reasons why people get married. The first reason why, one of the 2 reasons a person gets married is for same. So people get married for things to stay the same, or they get married for things to change. So I'm gonna start with same. The person that gets married for same is a person who has been analyzing however long this relationship has been going on, and they can see themselves doing this same thing with this same person for the rest of their lives. That is literally what they're saying I do to. I do want to do this, what we've been doing up until this point, for the rest of our lives or my life. And then you have the other person who gets married for change. This person, though this has not been the experience that they've been having for this journey up until this point, they have a mental picture of what marriage looks like. It could have been what their parents shared when they were married. It could have been what they saw on a movie. It could have been what they were taught marriage was. And in their mind, after they say those 2 words, I do, this is magically going to come to fruition. So that's literally the 2 reasons why people get married. So what happens is people are at the altar and they are both saying I do, but their I do's don't mean the same thing. You have one person that says, I do want to have a wife or a husband that lets me hang out with my friends and come in whenever I want to without giving me too much lip. I do want to leave work and come home as I please whenever I want to and not really have too much pushback. I do want to come home and be on my PS3 or PS4 all day when I get home, not really bothered by anyone and not have any pushback that I keep hearing from my boys that their girlfriend is giving them while they're at home, or their wife is giving them. And then you have another person that's like, I do want you to start spending more time with the children. I do want you to have a cooked meal for me when I get home. I do want you to be home by 9:30 instead of these late night hours. I do want you to stop hitting me. I do want you to start loving me. I do want you to start bringing me roses, flowers, all these I do's that don't align with what they've been experiencing. That is what they're really saying I do to. So both people are saying the same thing. After they get married, they go home, and the mental pictures of what marriage was for them starts to be different to what they're experiencing. And this is where conflict happens. There is no conflict when the 2 people are saying I do to the same visions. There's serious conflict when people are saying I do, but they have 2 different visions. So that is the reason why I had to explain why people get married, so that I can transition into the way to find out or realize whether you're about to marry the right person or about to marry the wrong person. Now, I noticed Michelle has written some notes down, so I want to allow her to share whatever her thoughts are up until this moment or to this point, and so we can go from there.
Well, I mean, I'm listening from the perspective of someone who's been married and divorced, and so it's just a different listen than somebody who's either preparing for marriage or excited about some love relationship they're involved in. And so I was listening to how you're saying there's 2 different reasons people get married. And fundamentally, I think what you're saying is, you people, we say either yes to us now or yes to the possibilities. And whether we're talking about changing those possibilities through influence or coercion or whatever, guilt, whatever we choose to use as a tool.
Yeah.
or we're saying yes to us, which does take into consideration, you got to know us. But, like marriage is such an interesting dynamic. I'm just listening intently and taking notes because, again, my perspective is from someone who's been married and divorced and probably has looked at this from a couple of different angles. And has the benefit of 2020. Honestly, I'm not married now, so I'm looking at this also from, the rearview mirror, which is a different perspective than in the heat of divorce or conflict, and which I did experience. But again, just a lot of different listening perspectives. So yeah, I'm gonna be taking notes because I'm gonna ask some questions.
Okay, all right, perfect. So yeah, honestly, it's really literally that simple. And what's unfortunate is what's not being taught when it comes to counselors or premarital counseling when they have these couples. Because I'm getting people that are going to counseling. They're talking about the biblical foundation of marriage and what the spouse should expect from the husband and what the husband should expect from the spouse, and a whole bunch of things and tools to assist in the marital process when they get married, when there's not necessarily any preventative teachings to find out as to whether they are marrying the right person. They're basically saying, hey, this is what you should keep in mind when you're getting married or if you're about to get married, but they're not necessarily saying, well, or putting something in place to say, hey, here's a good test to see if this person is the right person to marry. And this is what this show is about, because again, there's a lot of people that are about to make this decision. Now, the thing that bothers me, and it's difficult to share, like, for example, my book, I talk about this in my book, The Handbook for Increasing Your Relationship IQ. And I used to give it like, when people were already married, I'm like, you might find out that you married the wrong person, but it's not something that can't be fixed or groomed if you two are willing to work at it. And I could definitely give you the tools to do so, but it's way different than dodging the bullet, period. Or, and also another thing, I found people that found out that, oh my gosh, I am about to marry the wrong person, but because they've invested so much in it, they still go through with it. Again, self-esteem issue. You're worried
Guilty.
about.
I'm sorry, guilty. It's not illogical. It's very logical, but we'll talk about that later. Guilty.
It's real, but they're thinking, I've already invited people, I've already bought the wedding stuff, and I'm like, but you're talking about a lifetime with a person that you realize is not the right person. You're talking about an investment, or talking about being embarrassed. How about like loving yourself enough to say, wow, you know what? That's money that I might have lost, but it's definitely sanity that I've gained. But that's a whole nother conversation. So let's get into how you can find out as to whether you are about to marry the right or wrong person, and unfortunately possibly find out that you did marry the wrong person. So we've already go ahead. You got your hand up.
Before I ask you frame this conversation, and somehow in this, could you define what wrong is?
Of course, yeah. Well, it actually will explain itself when I explain how to find out as to whether you're marrying the right person or the wrong person. It like there's no way that you won't be able to see the definition of what the wrong person is when I explain this. So, I mean, it's I feel bad sometimes sharing this, but it's really this simple. And this show is not even going to be long unless we just dive into it really long. But it's as simple as this: asking the person that you're about to marry, what is it that you think is going to happen after we get married, or how do you envision, or what do you see marriage looking like? And being quiet, listening to what their picture of what marriage is, and seeing if you fit that picture. What you're either going to find out is you are exactly who they wanted to marry, or they wanted to marry you for who they wish you were. It's literally, it's that simple. It's an open-ended question. What do you think is going to happen, or what does marriage look like to you? Or what do you think is going to happen after we get married? And shut up. They can either write it out or they could say it to you. But what you will find out is they either are marrying who they wish you were, which means they're not marrying or in love with you. They're in love with who they hope you could be or wish you could be. And that is going to be your opportunity to bail or have a serious discussion and retract y'all's steps. Or you'll find that they really love you for who you are. But if they're marrying you to change you or in hopes that you will change, they're not really into you. And this is typically why when people say I do and their vision does not match, things change after the marriage happens. Because in their mind, the title of wife or the title of spouse does not match with or align with the title of what girlfriend or boyfriend or man or woman is or was to them. So they are trying to bring to fruition a vision that never existed. And unfortunately, the vision doesn't even align with who you are. It's really that simple. I mean, we can unpack it however you want, but it's an open-ended question. What do you expect to happen when we say I do or we get married? And they're going to tell you. They have no choice but to tell you. And if it's not who you are, that's not the right one. If it is who you are, that is the right one. So that is how that answers your question as to the right or wrong person. Because if the person doesn't want to marry you, that's not the right person for you. Period. Like, that is the wrong person for you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Michelle.
Again, okay, so remember, I'm listening to it from a couple different perspectives. And I'm going to tell on myself because it's all I know for sure. Is during the courtship, it is entirely possible. And I know we've talked about this, and part of this is the signals that you give out and how much information you give to somebody in the dating phase, where they can be actually telling you what you want to hear. And you may be enamored with the idea of happily ever after and caught up in the perceptions and the perspectives. And so asking that question to someone who's in the heat of it, they may mirror back to you what you think you want to hear. And I'm going to just say for myself, I was very young when I got married. And I had a perspective of what I thought marriage should be and coloring in with the lines and looking like it. This person checked off all those boxes, said all the right things, that the puzzle that I thought was really reflective of me was. And to be honest, I think I could play that for a little bit. But going back to a couple of episodes ago, without having the root of self-awareness and self-love, it's very easy to misinterpret the answer to that question or be so intertwined with each other in your buying into whatever this fantasy that has been built between the two of you, right? So whatever it is that you guys have bought so much into it, it's really easy to say the right thing and not feel the right thing later. Like, because we have this, and I'm just talking from somebody who literally walked down the aisle and in the mid aisle before the altar went, what's that? What? Not sure. But I'm literally halfway down the aisle at this point. So there's these tools that you use to overcome that because, so I'm just saying that there's a multiplicity of factors that play into how you interpret the answer of this person, including your own filter, whatever it is whatever your rose-colored glasses are, because I had some really beautiful ones, like they were just lovely. Everything just fit. It was just beautiful. Until somebody knocked them off and I went, whoa. Whoa. Back on. So I throw that out there to say, what are some tools for setting some parameters and benchmarks for even how to enter that conversation? Because it's, yes, that answer is revealing. Absolutely, without question, is revealing. But from my own space of being able to be honest with whatever I hear and being prepared for whatever I hear and being real clear about what I believe marriage is. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some things you got to do as a prerequisite to that question in order to really take that answer and do whatever it is what you're going to do with it.
Well, the prerequisite is actually the dating in the relationship process. So what they say is either going to align or be way off base from what has been going on. So at this point, I would hope, and this is a strong hope, I would hope that you're not about to get married without time invested to where you can kind of align as to whether what they say is BS or not. Not to mention,
I don't mean BS, and I don't mean BS. What I mean is that we believe what we want to believe to some degree. I mean, for example, somebody who feels like their ovaries about to dry up and they can't go on if I don't get married, they're not hearing the same thing as somebody who's 21, like, I got forever to live. You're just not hearing the same thing. Your factors for determining what you can deal with and what you can't.
So with that statement, so this goes back to the whole being enough and self-esteem, because
I agree.
Granted, your ovaries or whatever are you're not about to have babies, but so you're wanting to or willing to have a baby with someone that is not someone that you would want to raise your children or and things of that nature. So if you want to take that kind of game, this goes right back to what I said a few moments ago. I said, it's tough for me to do because I literally find people who find out that this is not a good idea, but because of their embarrassment or, as you stated, their situation or their clock ticking, they decide that, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And then they're distraught and they don't understand what the heck happened, and they're going into something that by default, comes with a wilderness, with a wilderness. Like, so I mean, there's nothing that I can really do with that outside of the fact that we're already discussing the foundation being self-love and self-interest, so that by the time it gets to this point, you're at a place where once you find out that the person does not love you in the sense that they're not really trying or looking to marry you, then I can't help that type of situation, which I'm hoping in this journey people will get to the point where they love themselves enough to where they can get to a point where they're sharing their truth with people, or they would not accept anything less than what they deserve in a mate, which basically is going to be someone who is really in love with or interested in them. So basically, like, that's the only way that we can approach this. And as I stated earlier, it's unfortunate, but people do literally conclude or realize, oh my gosh, he wasn't into me. Oh my gosh, she was into someone else. And they take that information and they still make a drastic decision to get married to that particular person. Anybody that's online, we dropped Michelle for a second, have any questions or experiences with this information that we're sharing? Like, this is, it's really, really an unfortunate truth, but it's really that simple. Like, I saved you thousands of dollars on marriage counseling or premarital counseling with that simple question. What is it that you think is going to happen when we say I do, or after we say I do, and when we get married? And be quiet. Let them write it out, talk it out. But if they do not describe you in that picture, they're not into you. They're into what they hope or wish that you would turn into. They're not really into who you are. And that is a dangerous person to get married to. This is why a lot of people are getting married, and soon as they get married, like, it was good. They're literally sitting, I'm like, I don't understand what happened. As soon as we got married, things changes because one of two people had in their mind a different vision of what was going to be that did not align with what was happening. And then that other person loved what was happening, so they decided to sign on the line for that life. So both people are saying what sounds like the same thing, but they're not saying the same thing when they say I do. And because of that, this is where the friction, the tension, the drama, and the frustration comes from. Why? Because all of our lives, from when we are babies up until we are adults, we have, as persons who were created by a creator that allows for us to create, we have been accustomed to getting what it is that we envision and we bring it to life. For example, as a baby, when you start crying, you either get your diaper changed, you either get your get a bottle, you'll get some type of a response to your actual crying or whining because you can't speak and articulate your thoughts or your needs at that time. So you will get what it is that you ultimately need, whether it's to be picked up, whether it's to get the bottle, whether it's to get changed. Those things are what you do as a baby to get what you need. And ultimately, it gets you what you need. Then as you grow older, you get to the point where there's things that you envision. Or I want this, let's say, icy. I want an icy. And so we ask our mom or our dad for an icy. They either buy us the icy or they say no. And if they say no, we get real creative. We start looking under the couch or in ashtrays and finding change and things of that nature and go find the icy lady to go buy us an icy. And if that doesn't work, we can't find any change, we'll get so creative that we will get some Kool-Aid or some kind of juice and add a whole bunch of sugar to it and put it in the freezer, and we will create the icy. But ultimately, we get what our mind's eye wanted to create as creative individuals. And then as we get older, we get to the point where we literally say, and even sometimes have prayers like, Lord, if you get me through this week, I'll just be okay. And only to, in a month or 2 weeks, a year later, to say the same exact thing, which means you got through whatever it is that you were praying or hoping that you were going to get through. Because that is the way that we are. We bring things to life that we envision or we want for ourselves. That is just the way that we were created, and that is the results that we get. But if you're coming into something to be as one through a marriage, that, on the other hand, is going to cause for two different visions to try to fight to have the same experience. Now, if you have two different visions and you who is accustomed up until that point to getting what you have in mind come to life for you, and that other person does not bring that to life, that's where the friction comes. That's where the fighting comes. That's where the sex stops. That's where the I don't want to be around them, and that's where we're starting to try to change each other. We're either trying to change somebody back to who they acted like they were, or we're trying to get someone to change to who we wish they were. And that's where the tension lies. That's where the drama comes from. That's where we kind of come to the indirect realization that the person that we married is not the one that we were supposed to marry, or they were not really interested in us. They were interested in who they were hoping or wishing for us to be. I'm still trying to see where Michelle is. If y'all have any questions or comments, please respond below here. I'm on Facebook Live now. Let's see here what we got. I see a Darius Ferguson. Good evening, sir. Good to see you. Let me reach out to Michelle. While I'm looking for Michelle, so if you are someone that is engaged, and again, Michelle and I, we've already discussed this. This is a very tough situation to be in. I know how quote or unquote embarrassing it could be. to have announced an engagement, to go through all the rigmarole of trying on a dress, finding a dress, getting groomsmen, asking friends to join in on this festive occasion, sending out the invitations if you've gotten that far, all of those things, it's very, for lack of a better term, embarrassing, but you've been in embarrassing situations. No person that's an adult old enough to get married has not been embarrassed, and you've survived and you've lived. It is dangerous to try to get married or decide to get married knowing after finding out that the person that you're about to get married to is not really interested in you. There's nothing that is going to make that process easier, better, or just something that is just going to do a 180 from what you've wished for or hoped for. Like, you have to live with that. You have to make a family with that. And there's literally people who are dying, and I mean literally dying, because they might have assumed that I hope or think that once he says that he loves me and we get married, that he'll stop beating me, or she'll stop abusing me, or her attitude will change, or his attitude will change. So this is not something to play with. We're talking about a lifelong journey. And a simple question like this could really, really prevent you from taking a lifelong journey with someone that you're not meant to take that journey with. Yes, it's good to have the tools of what to do when you are with a spouse, or it's good to know what you should do with that person or how to interact and engage. But if that person is not who you're supposed to be with, it's going to be difficult to even do the things that you're supposed to do with that person. They're going to change. They're going to flip, and they're going to act according to their thought process or their vision. So a person's expectation is what causes them to have disappointments. And if you're going into a marriage with expectations of things being the same as what they've been, and they change, you are going to be drastically disappointed. If you go into a marriage with expectations that it is going to change to what you envision marriage to be, and it has not been that for the entire time up until that point, you are going to be drastically disappointed. And I don't wish that or want that for anyone. It is a horrible and very trying experience to go through. And there's literally people that are existing in relationships like that today, not understanding what the heck happened. So if you are married and you are going through this, or you notice that this is what has happened, I do recommend you asking what your spouse concluded what happened once you all got married, and finding out. And if and when they give you that answer and you find that they really did marry you for change, this is time for some serious conversations to be had. If you're engaged with someone and they give you a total different response to what you had concluded marriage would be like, that is definitely time for you also to have a very, very difficult conversation. Please bear with me. I think Michelle is back. Yeah, I was just talking about how if it, unfortunately, the person got to the point where they are married, it's still a conversation to be had, and find out if this is what has been causing you all to have difficulty throughout this part or time in your marriage, so that you all can explain, like, how did we come to this conclusion? There you go. And what is the reason for this thought process? What made you think that I would change? Or if you would be willing to go into the route of the request. That's a whole nother conversation. So people do evolve, change, grow, and things of that nature. But typically you start at a place where that evolution is something that is already noticed and and it's something that happens collectively together. So you all have already built something and established in a relationship where that evolution you can see already happening, and it's not being side blinded by it. Whereas if you found yourself in that respective relationship, going into it thinking one thing and then getting the total opposite, that's more devastating than people just growing and evolving to someone.
I would agree. Because that would have been my experience. My experience was getting into something, expecting one thing and getting something else, but ultimately taking responsibility for not taking as much inventory or being as mindful as I should have, or even asking questions like the one you posed early in the process. And I think that's what's good about having these type of conversations, is giving people more tools to consider as they walk into these experiences. And, like what I was really trying to say was, there's a foundation that is built that's leading up, and maybe sometimes racing like, a freight train toward the altar as this event called marriage, right? So it's an event. It's not even like a full life. It's an activity. And there's so much weight on the activity that these questions get lost in the mix, because once you made a decision to have this event, then your logic seems to fly out the window, because like you said, there's this all the weight of the responsibility, all the weight of the things moving, the fun of this event where you're going to be the center of attention. So even if you're just purely ego driven, this is an amazing day. Get to wear this amazing dress and where they have these amazing pictures, and I'll be preserved as a Cinderella for the rest of my life, or Prince Charming for the rest of my life. So there's all of that has to quiet down and have a safe place for asking this question, because the possibility of the answer being something different than you expect means you have to step out of the fray of this freight train to have this conversation. And that's what I was really trying to say. Like, I personally never stepped out of the fray. Like, once we made the decision, and I'm so stubborn and I'm so headstrong, I was like, this is where we're going. And didn't even like think about it until, like I said, I'm in the car driving to the church, and my father's trying to talk to me. I'm like, I don't know why you're talking. Whew. And I'm sure it's that moment, like, and you're so lovely, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this is like so out of, like, this would mean I'd have to get emotional and not focus on the end game, which is look cute.
Wow.
So, like that. So that's why I say, that's my experience, and I'm only one person, but I'm saying that there's so much going on up here that the quietness that it requires to ask that question requires you to step away for a second from all of this stuff.
Yeah. And this is my prayers and my hopes is you're not that far into the process. Mm-hmm. But at the same token, as I stated, there's people that are already married, and this could be your aha moment. Oh my gosh, this is possibly why things did make a drastic change, and we had a 180 in our interaction right after we got married. And it's like, what the heck? Where did this come from? This would be the best place for you to start. Ask your spouse, why did you marry me? What did you think was going to happen when we got married? I just would like to know, what's your perspective of what marriage looks like and things of that nature. It's not an offensive or valid, invalid question. Like, what are your thoughts about marriage? I mean, if you want to pose it that way, what are your thoughts about marriage? But that could be a vague question. So that's why I really stress, like, what does marriage look like to you? I think that's a better question. What does it look like to you? Because like you stated, people could say things that, I think it's when man and woman, they show their expression of loving themselves or whatever. Yeah, that's nice. That's great. And I'm glad that you love me.
2.5 kids, picket fence, and a dog. That's what marriage looks like.
Yeah, exactly. The picket fence and all that stuff. Yeah, that's beautiful.
401k, a retirement plan, a couple of vacations a year.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. College tuition paid. Yeah, but that doesn't address
Exactly. So if you were a director or a writer of this thing called marriage, how would you describe my role as the actor? give me some characteristics. What do you see me doing? and allow for them to draw that picture. Because I promise you, I don't care who you are, you have a picture. You're getting married with a picture. And it's either going to be a picture of what you've been going through or a picture of what you want to go through. And if those two things don't match, I promise you, you all are setting yourselves up for some serious drama, some serious problems. Because as I stated earlier, we are creators. So everything up until that point, you've created to happen in your life. If you envisioned it, you did everything it took for that to come to fruition. And now we're two creators that have two different visions, and you're going to do everything you can possibly do to try to make it come to life like you did with everything you did up until that point, even up to the relationship. Go ahead.
So here's a powerful thing in that statement. And so we say you've already gotten married, right? And you're in this seat. And again, 2020, I'm not married now, but I lived through it. That the power and the energy and the positivity that you actually were able to materialize a wedding, right? You actually, like, you thought about wanting to get married. You finally got married. You thought about Joe Charming or Miss Princess, and you found this person that fit 90% of the stuff. Like, that's amazing. Like, you did bring yourself to that point. So the cool thing is that if you can stop, ask the question that you're saying, like, well, what does it look like? Or how does it feel like? Or my favorite question is, where are you trying to be in 2 years, 5 years? What I mean, like, am I going to be on, not whether I'm going to be on the bus or not, that's irrelevant, but where are you trying to be? So I can figure out whether my train's going to hook or we're going to just be parallel or whatever it is. But let that person have their thing. But the cool thing is that if you were able to materialize, get to the point that you're at now with the passion and everything, then you probably can get to the next step, which is if they answer the question, however they answer the question, y'all can probably agree on how we're going to get to the next part and do that. But it does take an agreement.
Well, that statement
because
is true.
People agree to get married 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, that statement is true, but it's all dependent on why they made it happen. And this, and I have to unpack what you stated.
Motivation.
Typically, the motivation behind the success of the wedding came is because they wanted to please other people. 9 times out of the 10, a wedding is not even about the people. It's about the show for other people.
About the family.
It has nothing to do with you all, and you're not even going to enjoy it. Those pictures look good, but you were forced to smile. You were forced to put your jacket on your shoulder and look behind or what have you and show the ring or whatever. And it's annoying. Like, no, time to move here. Time for y'all to be here. Tap your glass, y'all kiss. I'm like, I got something on my teeth. Can I at least switch some water around my mouth first so I can kiss? Like, it's a lot of, like, it's staged things that are going on.
There are people who love pageantry, though. I guess that's what I'm saying. There are people who love pageantry, and so for them, it was a milestone. So I am not devaluing in any stretch of the imagination that moment, but it is a milestone.
I will never devalue the moment, but I do know that there's intention behind every action. There's a motive behind every action, and oftentimes we've already discussed the fact that people typically, after they find out that they're not marrying the right person or they're questioning it, they still go through with it. That's evidence enough that says that people will have the marriage because they're thinking about who's watching. Oh my gosh, I got left at the altar. That is so embarrassing that, like, they draw all these pictures as opposed to the picture of, after I do this, I have to deal with this for the rest of my life. But there's some people that responded. Let me look at what they had to say. Miss Susie, she said, there's no price in fixing a hopeful marriage than this girl who had a shotgun wedding. I don't regret my kids, but I did learn after 16 years what I was not putting up with. Someone else put, some people rush getting married to all the wrong for all the wrong reasons. Let me see here. This is why communication is important in relationships. Of course. And that's what I'm saying. Before we get to that place, like, if you're engaged and you haven't gone down all that, like, this is the number one, before you pick your colors, this is the number one question that must be asked. What is it that tell me what it looks like to be married to you. That's pretty much the question that you have to ask. If you ask that question, you're going to find out if they were really considering marrying you or the hopes of which you could become. And if they were marrying the hopes of what you become, that's not a good arrangement, because you're expected to be changed into something that you're not. And if you're not happy with that, you don't need to be getting into that. So yeah, like I agree with what you said, but the actual intent behind the wedding, oftentimes they're so concerned about what people think about the wedding, they're not even considering that yes, we came together and we created this extravagant, beautiful thing. But if the friends are not involved, then you're not going to get that in your marriage. And that's why a lot of times the marriage doesn't work out in the first place, because it was the wedding that the mom wanted the daughter to have, or the wedding that the dad thought the son should be able to pull off. So those are the things that they're bringing into the marriage. So it's mom and dad that's really dictating what happens in the marriage. So it's all these people in the freaking marriage, and they're wondering why there's so much drama and stress in the marriage, because it's not yours. So if you are making a decision, and I beg of you, I can't stress this enough, you've been embarrassed before. But if you know in your heart of hearts that this person is not really the right person for you, please don't do it. Do not do it. It's going to be tougher to rip off the Band-Aid or whatever once you get into it than it is to avoid it at all. Go ahead. I see you raising your hand, Michelle.
I just wanted to share a testimony. Like, again, while I was in my marriage and having the benefit of the experience of trying to figure out why and how come and what's going on, I had the privilege of mentoring a young lady who was going through the situation that we're discussing right now. And she had all the pressure and the external factors of, it's time, this person looks like they're right for you, you look great together. The person asked, she was ready in her life to do it. And there was, just because we had a good, close relationship and what I was going through, the place I was. And so really the point of this story is, because I was in the place I was, I said to her, if you, at the moment, even up until you say I do, have any sort of discomfort or fear or anxiety, and you just want a moment, or you just want to stop and just give me the look, I will come get you. We'll walk out. We'll figure out what happens next. Don't worry about it. So just that moment of giving her the space to think about that caused her to reflect and choose not to get married. She's now married. Now she's living happily ever after. She found that person. But again, my point being, give yourself the space to pause. Because what I got out of what you were saying, what I wrote was, in order to ask that question, you got to get in a posture of receiving the answer, whatever the answer is. Like, you got to get in the space of listening. Yeah. And then the other thing, which we haven't talked about, is you got to be able to answer that question. Like, you should be able to answer that question, because if the person asks you, you ought to be able to give them a good enough answer. That's right. That whatever they said would make them at least think about it. But if you keep just worrying about yourself and getting the right answer is only one part of, especially in a marriage, it's only one part of the equation. The other part is what, to your point of intent, well, what is your answer going to be when that person flips it on you? Yeah. And I'll be honest, I probably didn't have an answer. Except you asked, and I said yes. So, that in itself is worth you sitting down like, yo, what are we really about to get into? Are you marrying I think we cared a lot about each other. I definitely say that. I mean, like I said, the roller coaster had left the train, had left the station, and we was like, oh my God, there's a baby! What? Oh, another one! Oh my God! 3? What has happened to my life? So I would get so it was a bam. So I'm just saying, you need to give yourself the space. Forgive yourself for rushing in sometimes. Like, I would tell you, one of the things I had to forgive myself for was not being ready to answer that question, and forgive myself for rushing. Like, even right up to the moment of saying I do. Like, if you got to give yourself some space. like maybe I made a mistake, and answer that question for a second. Like, if I did, whew, that's something to accept.
Yeah.
And then sit, like I said, be in the posture of listening too.
Yeah, most certainly. And she's not saying, I can assure you, she's not saying that if you have butterflies or nervousness, don't.
No. This is like a deep kind of like.
Yeah, just want to clarify. But if you have something in your spirit that's saying this is not right, for one, you need to figure out why do you feel that way, and then if you can figure out why you feel that way, ask the necessary questions to get clarity on whether it's a valid feeling or not. And that's the whole point of this, the simple question, like, what is it that you expect to happen, or how do you envision marriage looking like after we say I do? It's a real simple question, but it will give you so many answers to your future as to whether you should be going in the direction with them to your future or going the opposite way. Because once you know how they feel about you, for one, you know that whether you were really loved for who you are, or you find out that you're loved for who they wish you were. And that's not being loved. That's a very hard.
I'm just begging people to take the same question that you're saying and turn it on themselves, because it's a even harder question to answer for yourself than it
certainly
is
because if you are another, like as we've been discussing for the last several weeks with insecurities and stuff, if your reason for wanting to get married is for someone to be your savior, there's a problem in itself with that, and we'll discuss that more so in other shows. But that is definitely like this show is more so for the person that is engaged, or more so for the person that's dating, and they're gonna eventually get to this point. I really need for you to have this conversation. It's clearly not a dating question.
I don't know. I mean, I think a version of it should be after dating as well, right? Like, where do you see? Where are you going in 5 years? Just where you going? Like, I don't know. It doesn't matter where I'm going. Just what do you want? What does your life look like?
Well, that's not. I mean, but that's not. That's something totally different from what do you expect to happen basically with me after we say I do. Now, what you're looking for, or you expect, or what are your aspirations as far as this whole dating thing, to find out if you're wasting your time? Because why in the world would you be dating if the end game is not to be literally with someone or be married to someone? Yeah, but to ask for details on what it is that they're expecting, especially from you at a dating, it'll probably be your last date. So you can try it if you want. but I don't really see that.
I wouldn't know. I don't know. I don't ask those questions.
I don't see that being like a first date question, but
no,
his own. And but it's definitely a question that needs to be answered and understood before you walk down that aisle. It really is. And even if you've already paid for the wedding, got the pastor, you went through the marital counseling, which this blows my mind as a counselor that this is not a question that these counselors with these PhDs and things of that nature are not having people ask. It's the simplest but most important question to ask. What do you expect to happen when we say I do, so that I can know that it's me that you really want to marry? Is that simple?
It goes back to your first statement, which is most times by the time you get to the counselor, they're functioning from the premise that now that you're going to get married, here's the handbook. Not have you considered whether or not this is a good idea.
I think that makes you suck as a counselor. I really do. If you I've not been. As a counselor, I need you to ask that tough question. Like, as a counselor, isn't it your job to see if they're really ready to get married? So how about we start with, are y'all really ready to get married? Because are y'all really wanting to marry each other? Let's start with that.
I would love to see the comments, because I'm pretty sure that some people do get that question. But again, from my own perspective, you come in knowing that question is going to ask, you already got an answer. And it's not because it's the right answer. It's because it's the one that you need to say to get to the next step. So I guess
that's what I love about that question. That's not a question you can make up. That's not even a question that you could really, you can massage it and make it seem like something you can't say a cookie cutter that's a wonderful statement answer to that question. It's really a tailor-made question to our situation and who I am. What do you expect to happen after we get married? You have to talk to me about me. You have to talk to me about what do you expect of me, and you can't fake that. And I think that's why one of the things that I think is sexy about someone when it came to finding a mate is an intelligence. Like, you can't fake that. You can try, but that is sexy to me. That's why I love Maya Angelou. Like, you can't fake that type of wisdom and intelligence. Can't do it. Like, that is not, it's not possible. You can put makeup on or whatever. You could put on a bad dress. You could exercise. You could do all that stuff. But what come out of your mouth from that head cannot be faked. Can't be faked. So when you ask that open-ended question of what is your vision of what marriage looks like? What do you see me doing or see happening from a standpoint of me and how I interact with you? And being quiet and listening, you're either going to find out that they're interested in you or they're not. And if they're not interested in you, that's not who you need to be going to the altar with. There's serious discussions that need to be had.
I think what you said, like, so in the midst of that conversation, because what you're saying is that when you're asking this question, you're going to get an answer. And it absolutely is going to be start of a conversation. And if they've answered it honestly, I think you owe them. I think it's awesome that you've now created this space to have a conversation that maybe you wouldn't have had, but now you get to have it from, this perspective of a lifetime, and feed off of whatever their answer is. And I think that it could be the root of a really good, healthy, awesome, revealing conversation.
Of course. I am not denying the fact that this is a terrifying question.
You could get an answer you're not comfortable with.
It's a scary question to ask, which is why a lot of people, even as I stated, after I share it with them, they won't do it. They won't do it. And they'll go into it without doing it and having that in the back of the head. Like I said at the beginning of the show, like it's going to be an uncomfortable show because once you know this, you can't unknow this. And if you ask it and you find out,
can't necessarily override it and try to fix it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not the question. That's not the answer to go back and make them edit. Like, it's their
elaborate on that.
Like, if they give you the story that doesn't jive with yours, for example, that came from a place, right? So it came from somewhere.
Yeah.
So don't go, you don't mean that. You really mean da 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 da. Like,
exactly.
No,
take it at face value. Take it as face value, and make your decision.
This is what you said. So maybe you might want to ask clarifying questions. So did you mean this when you said that?
Yeah.
And they go, blah 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 blah, and you go, cool. So if such and such, what do you think about that? Like, you can't go say you shouldn't believe that. You shouldn't say that. No. You should have said this. Don't you know your mama said, but that's not the way. Like, you just gotta, so.
But see, and that's basically what you're going to be doing. You're going to be changing or trying to change who they are. Right. And again, which in turn means you're not marrying someone that you really want to be with. That's not their view. That's not what they've envisioned. Like, it's unfortunate that they don't want you as you are, but now you have a choice to make.
Yeah. The other thing I had to say is, like, what I'm speaking from personal experience, again, from being a people pleaser type personality, what do you call it, perfectionist and all that. Like, you got to be careful not to make your answer mirror their answer. Like, if they turn around and like say, well, that's blah 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 blah, and you go and they say, well, what did you look for? Like, you can't turn around and go, everything you just said.
Well, that's why. Matter of fact, if you're concerned that would happen, then I would say, how about we write out what we expect? Now that takes away. Exactly. Let's switch papers. You write out what you expect to happen or what you're looking forward to. Now you have that in black and white. That is that you can't get any realer than that. Like you have to see. You can't forget that. Like you have Miss Lisa put there should be no doubt. If there's any doubt, then they should not get married yet. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
yet is a very powerful word in this conversation.
Yeah. It's most certainly.
Just because it's not today does not mean never. And forgiving yourself for not being ready. And I was just joking with you earlier. Like, I just watched The Bachelor. Oh my God. Like the most traumatic show. Like, don't do it if you're dating. It's just ugly. But their whole thing is trying to cram a whole lifetime of dating in 6 weeks, and you're not ready yet. Right? So you may have all of the indicators and all the buzz and all this feeling good. Yeah, it's great. But not yet is a reasonable answer. Like, can I have more time is a reasonable answer. It doesn't mean no. It just means, can we just pause a little bit? I think I probably would have been in a different place if I had just said, hey, can we just slow down? But I was too like, whoa! It's just like it's too much, and again, too young. And I'm not going to say everybody who's chronologically a certain age is too young, but I will say that wisdom and some experience and some access to wisdom is very valuable in the process. And again, me being able to sit with a young lady and say, hey, here's my experience. If you have a feeling or you want to talk about something, even up until you say, I am here for you. That is just a powerful space to give people. And I think this conversation is doing the same thing. It's like, just give yourself a moment. It could be that the peace is in your soul. Like, because at the end of the day, right, a good decision is based on peace. Like when you can have peace about it, and not necessarily elation and joy, but peace is a very powerful decision-making indicator.
Well, a good decision is logical. An emotional decision is not a good decision. Like you cannot be emotional and logical at the same time. It's one or the other. So, which is why I literally, like, if my wife is emotional or upset about something, I give her, I don't know where I got this number from. I give her 3 days and I go back and we can talk about it. Like, and I find that she literally heard what I said. She even was able to understand what I said, but at the time that I said it, how she felt, that is not happening. We can't even really talk and discuss it, which is me understanding that you can't be logical and emotional at the same time. I respect that, and I don't try to combat logic with emotion. Just like I would not try to be, while I'm upset, try to share something or relay a message because it's not really from a thought out place. So as you stated, like, you need to step away from the ring, step away from the people that are talking about your marriage, and really think about what it is that you're about to get into. And a good measurement for me, because you talked about age and things of that nature, I really don't think that age is necessarily a prerequisite for maturity for marriage or wisdom. Matter of fact, I got married at 22 years of age. I'm going on 15 years of marriage successfully now. So I got married with people at a time where people will consider me young. And heck, I'm the one that's teaching people that have been married 50, 40 years how to fix and resolve the issues in their relationships. But I think a very good way to gauge as to whether it's too early is if you've never gotten into an argument or disagreement. If you and the other person have not had a disagreement and you haven't seen how they are when they're mad at you, it's too early. You don't know that person yet. I can say with confidence that you don't know that person, and you're probably not. It's a very high probability that you're not ready to get married to that person yet, because you don't really know how they feel about you. You know how a person feels about you when they are mad at you. That is the epitome of how they feel about you when they are mad at you. They will say what they've been thinking about you when they are mad at you. Whether it's it's wrong, or they say, well, I was mad at the moment. That did not come from some random space. That is something that has been tucked in and sitting and stewing for a moment, and they just hadn't said it yet. They hadn't gotten mad enough to be honest about it yet. So if you have not been in an argument yet, or had a disagreement yet, or saw them mad at you, I can assure you, you don't know who you're about to marry or be with. You don't know them. You don't know them. You can't even really say you know somebody if you've never seen them mad. You haven't seen all the dynamics of who they are if you have not had an argument with them or weren't upset with them. I'm sorry, hold on. I got a response. It says, I was told I was too young when I got married. My husband and I were only 18, but we were sure and knew without any doubt that we wanted to spend forever together and shared the same vision. This year will be 27 years in love together. That shared vision thing, you don't understand how powerful that is. That's the whole point.
Powerfulness of deciding on something, agreement.
That's the whole point of this question, to find out where you all's visions lie. If your visions are different, there's going to be a problem when you say I do. I promise you. It sounds like the same thing. We're both saying I do. But in our minds, one person is saying, I do want my clothes washed by the end of the week and folded or whatever. I do want dinner on the table by the time I get home. I do want you to spend time with your children that you have not been spending time with all this time. I do want my house to be clean all the time. I do want you not to be hanging out with your guys. Like, if you're changing what you've been experiencing in your I do, it's a high probability that there's going to be a problem in that marriage. Because I can almost assure you, the person that you want to change loves how they're being right now. They love not cleaning up behind themselves. They love playing the PS4. They love not spending time with their kids. It's not going to change once you say I do. It's just not going to happen. It might eventually happen as they grow and mature, but I promise you, it don't have nothing to do with them saying I do. I promise you. So this needs to be discussed, understood, and addressed way before you all put them bands on and turn around and your last name changes to the hairs or what have you, or however y'all go about that, and start walking on this earth as a unit. Because in the end, you're one. You're two people that become one. So if all right, I'll put it to you like this. There's a parable or some kind of story about a snake with two heads doesn't eat. A snake with two tails will eat. So basically what it's saying is, if it has two heads, it's going to be going in different directions. I want to eat over there. No, I'd rather have this to eat. So it never makes a decision because the two heads are going in different directions. Whereas if you have two tails, but one head, those tails are going to always end up going in the right direction. So if you two go into this whole marriage thing with two tails but one head, I can assure you the decision-making, the life-changing in the wilderness that is inevitable, that is going to come, because there's going to be a wilderness. I'm going to tell you that right now. There's going to be stuff that will knock the air out of you. But if you all have the same vision in mind, you can get through that together. And we have to wrap this show up. Michelle, do you have any final words? We're definitely over time.
We over time. I'm mirroring what you say. If that's what you want, then that's what
we're definitely over time. I can't stress to you all enough. If you are a person listening right now and you heard what's going on, you haven't had this conversation yet, you are engaged, yet you have made a list of investments, especially, and I can't stress this enough because this topic is sensitive to me, especially if you're being abused. And you are going into this thinking that once I say I do, this person is going to stop treating me the way that they've been treating me. Please decide to not go into this. I'm serious. Please don't do it. Get the answers that you need to be had. Ask that question. Find out how they really feel about you so that you can, one, go into a marriage knowing that you, and I mean you, are loved, not some fictitious version of you is being loved. You know that you are loved. That in itself will bring so much confidence in what you're about to get into, and not to mention so much longevity to the marriage itself, knowing that the person that you're about to marry has the same vision in mind, meaning they really love each other as individuals. They will be able to be prosperous and successful. With that being said, I love you all again weekly and technically day in and day out, because I'm thinking about you all, figuring out what the topic is going to be, how we're going to dive into some things that might not have gone too in depth as much as we could have. And I'm going to keep coming week after week so that we can grow in love together, fall in love with ourselves as well as with our partners and our future partners, so that it'll be easier to navigate through the storms that are indefinite and inevitable when it comes to this thing called love. So I love you all. I'm humbled that you all allow for me to serve you all, and I'll be talking to you all next week. Love y'all. Peace.